Let's look at some of the main laws that impact on us when we're trying to manage our contracts. Number one, and probably was the obvious one, is our law of contracts or contract law. Now this is based on the common law principle, and as such, it has evolved with the decisions made of judges. So most of contract law is actually judge-made law, based on different sort of precedents over time. Interestingly, there's a lot of historical precedents, and even now, some of the examples used actually refer cases, I've got no idea of time, but a long, long time ago. Like Old England days.
By George, he's got it.
When they had funny voices. If I could do accents, I would. The notion is really like, you can make any kind of deal you want.
Now, here's the deal.
And if that deal meets certain conditions, we're going to call it a contract, and the courts will come in and enforce your deal. So, contract law effectively is striking a bargain that the courts will actually step in if required. And these are beautiful people striking a beautiful bargain. Now, over time, what happens is statutes start compiling and increasing, and they start limiting our freedoms to strike whatever bargain we want. One of those examples we'll talk about now, called the Competition and Consumer Act, or affectionately known the Australian Consumer Law. So this is a recent law, I think around 2011, which is 1st of Jan. The Australian Consumer Law was published. I think it brought together around 17, I can just edit this in post-production, Disparate Trade Practices Act across the different states and territories, and harmonise it into one nice document called the Australian Consumer Law. Now, this is a good law, don't get me wrong, but when we're managing contracts, again, it does, remember our video about statutes will override common law? It does sometimes impact on our contracts and our ability to manage agreements. In some cases, the terms that me and my friend here have agreed for our bargain may actually be magically, I don't know how it happens, it is magic, magically overridden by the Australian Consumer Law. Even though we've agreed to them, even though we believe they're fair and that's what we want, the Australian Consumer Law could step in and say, hang on, you guys now, your agreement is actually made up of these new terms. And again, based on this principle, it can. As I said, generally it's actually a good law. I mean, how it impacts contract managers is number one, it says, look, whatever you've promised, you got to deliver on. That's pretty fair. You need to be able to deliver them within a reasonable time frame, within the reasonable level of skill and expertise. There's some really good stuff in there. It also tries to prohibit unethical dealings. And it says, look, you've got to be honest, ethical. You can't mislead or deceive people. You've just got to be a good dude. So this is two parts of this law which I find are really, really good. And there's some other stuff. So if you're using boilerplate terms or standard form contracts, basically it's a contract that you take to the other party and say, hey, look, I've already got these terms and conditions here. All I want you to do is sign it, or the deal's off. So when parties don't have equal bargaining power and one person signs another contract, there's provisions within the Australian Consumer Law that basically can void unfair terms. There's a bit more to that, but think about this as a good law. It's there to protect a bargain, and it's there to protect fairness and equality. As I delete this, we can talk about the Records Act. And look, there's no harmony here. Each state pretty much decides how they roll with this. So for us in Western Australia, in the year 2000, you've got the State Records Act. And look, this largely applies to government. So whilst you may not be captured under the Act, if you're a private organisation, you can do what you want. It's still good to understand how it works, and it sets a baseline. So, it's actually good to keep good records. I mean, I wish I could bring back my drawing here, but I did not keep good records. If only I'd videotaped that content prior to. Anyway, the State Records Act sets a framework for what's accepted and sometimes what's mandated for government contracts to be run. Health and safety. Now, we nearly had harmonisation here, but WA and Victoria didn't come to the party. I don't think it was a very fun party, so I think they said, hey, we're not coming to this party. We've got other engagements which are way better. Anyway, so for the purpose of this session, look, you can consider these as the same. There are differences that exist between the two legislations, but whether it's occupational or work, health and safety, the ideology of the legislation is the same. It actually originated from the law trying to protect people and trying to say to employers, look, we want you to put people above profits. That's it. That's the ideology of that law. So inherently, it's a great law. It seeks to make people safe. I mean, most contracts we have are going to involve, in some capacity, people. So I'm going to say everyone kind of needs to be cognizant of this and their obligations. Hopefully, when you're doing your risk assessment for contracts, you're considering, the risk to people and personnel, not just to your own people and personnel. I mean, think about your contractors and other people that may come on side to deliver this agreement. And don't say, look, they're a contractor, I'm all good, I'm removed from this, I'm handballing this obligation to be safe to my contractor. This is a non-delegatable legislation, which basically says, look, the principal, let's say the business owner, and the contractor have actually got to make this work. They both have obligations within this arrangement.